What up, Facebook Live family and friends? The Head Therapist is back. Elliot Andre from Connected Roots. Today I got a super sick interview with my boy Marc Azoulay. What up?
What up?
Let's
do it.
Let's do it.
Masculinity.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Nothing but hype.
Nothing but hype. Gotta bring it. So before we get started, Marc, my dude, introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are, what you specialize in, and what you're all about.
Yeah, so I'm Marc Azoulay. I'm a therapist in private practice. I'm also the president of the Four Corners Group Psychotherapy Society, and I do a lot of work with men. My demographic is angry dudes. So
A lot of fucking angry dudes out
dude,
there.
they're so angry. Like, oh my
wow.
god, in this town. So in this town, it's not just like. So we have the stereotype, right, of like
Sure.
the big, bulky, like
Me.
bruiser dude. Yeah, you got some guns. But you, this is masculinity.
Yeah. we're trying to let you know what's up.
Yeah, you have to compliment each other on like your strength.
Always.
That's how you know.
Yeah, that's how you know your bros.
That's how you're bros.
Yeah.
But no, but what's more common here is like the nice guy.
Yeah.
So it's the guy that like, you know, he says yes to everything, right? He has very poor boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he overcommits to stuff.
Right.
And he's like very pleasant.
Yeah.
But underneath that is like pure rage, like
Mhm.
deep rage. And unfortunately, these are the guys who end up being like, you know, the domestic violence abusers,
Mhm.
the sexual perpetrators,
Got it.
the Me Too people.
Damn.
Right? It's the guys that you don't expect, right?
Just listed it off, man. Keep on going.
Yeah.
It's literally. What aren't they almost?
It's these guys. It's the
Yeah.
guys that are like really nice,
Mhm.
but then one day they just like fucking flip, right? They just
Yeah.
act out and they just do something crazy, and it hurts people.
Totally.
So those are mainly the guys that I work with. Is dudes
Totally.
that, you know, are aware of that rage and are
Mhm.
oftentimes actually afraid of it, actually frightened of it.
Totally.
So they come to therapy to talk about
Right,
it in a
right,
safer
right.
space.
Totally. That makes absolute sense. And you know, I think you just totally summed up beautifully what sets you apart, who you work with, and all that. I want to talk about this idea of rage because people really are scared of being angry.
I know.
And I've noticed that in my own practice, you know, running groups and individual, that, you know, people just, you know, you say anger and they just, you know, and I know this is your expertise, so I want you to tell everybody out there, you know, thumbs up if you are that kind of person who is scared of anger, because I feel like a lot of people are. Just talk to that a little bit and tell people, you know, how you deal with it, how you cope with it, and what you kind of bring to your clients in that regard.
Yeah, a lot of men get their education on anger. I like to think from like the Incredible Hulk.
Sure.
Right? They have this idea that like when they get mad, they're going to become this like monster,
Mm-hmm.
and that they have to like, you know, the Hulk, right? He like when he freaks out, he has like the people like airlift him and like drop him in the desert. So you can just like punch cactuses
Literally.
until like he like fucking calms down, right?
Cactus.
But that's what he does.
Yeah,
Right? He
totally,
like,
yeah,
throws
yeah.
rocks and like, you know, like uppercut sand dunes and I don't know,
Right,
And
absolutely.
then like he comes back and he's back to Bruce Banner.
Sure.
And he's like accepted in society.
Right,
Like
right.
the Hulk is not accepted.
Right.
Right. But Bruce
Totally.
Banner is accepted, right?
Yeah.
And he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he's the greatest guy.
Yeah. He's like
my dad.
he's like a scientist, he's
Right.
like very pleasant.
Totally.
You know, but like underneath that is like a monster.
Right.
And I think we get a lot of that, and especially now in this modern era, which I believe we'll maybe disagree or can talk about this. I
Yeah,
think
we're going to.
it's very soft. I think this era might be a little bit too soft,
Mm.
where aggression is viewed as violence. And
Sure.
from the method I work with, modern psychoanalysis, aggression and violence are actually very different things.
Okay.
So I'll define that.
Yeah,
So,
speak to that, please.
yeah, so aggression, by the way that I define it, it's the idea of enacting one's will on the environment. That's what aggression is. So like making a change. So if you think
Got
about
it.
human history, right?
Yeah.
Back to like cavemen and cave women,
Sure.
right? Like to survive,
Mhm.
we had to, you know, kill animals,
Right.
right? Cut down trees,
Yeah.
light them on fire,
Totally.
burn the meat,
Yeah.
consume it,
Yeah.
find a shelter that probably was inhabited by another animal, kill that fucker,
Literally.
right? Like
Yeah.
kill that bear,
Yeah.
live in his house, right? I mean, like
Don't take no
I
shit.
think no shit, like fuck up the world, right?
Totally.
I mean, like look at like this. I mean, look at where we live, right? Like this used to be untamed wilderness,
Totally.
and we've crafted it through aggression
Yeah.
into something that supports human life.
Right.
Right. There is an argument to be made that the thing that humans do more than
Mhm.
any other animal is aggression. That we are the most aggressive animal in the world. Right.
Yeah.
We are the
Science,
apex
science
predator.
shows that, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, science shows that. The
Yeah.
world shows that.
Totally,
Right? Like
yes.
even stuff that just tanks us,
Mhm.
like sharks or
Yeah.
like lions, right? Like we tell them where to go.
Yeah.
Right? Like we know
Yeah.
where the sharks are. They
Right.
can live there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like
We're the gatekeepers almost in that regard.
yeah, right. They come near us, like we pop them, right?
Right,
It's like
right.
wolves, right? Like we've
Mhm.
eliminated every single apex predator on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing that can take us.
Right.
Right? And
really fucked up, actually, now that I think about it.
it's crazy.
But yeah, go on.
That's evolution.
Right.
I mean,
of course.
That's the thing. So it's more about like, I mean, I think your response is really common, right? Like that there is some guilt, right? Especially now when we look at things like social justice movement and things like colonialism and things where aggression moved into violence. Right. And so by violence, I mean sadism, which means wanting to cause harm and getting pleasure in harm.
Got it.
Right? So if you look at like ancient peoples or you look at hunters today, right, they might enjoy the hobby, but they're not like getting off on killing an animal. No. Right? They're doing it for food, they're doing it for sport.
Yeah, right? Sustenance, living their life,
Exactly, for mastering, right? Like it's building skills. Yeah. It's not like we look at sadism, maybe the most common example is like the Nazi regime. Right. Or you look at other genocides, or you look at things like abuse, or you look at things like slavery, where there does seem to be this like celebration of violence. Totally. Right? There's a glorification of harm and of violence. And that's when it's too much. Right. But I think our culture, because it is, especially Boulder, which is hyper progressive, hyper liberal, right?
Almost to like a scary amount.
To a weird amount.
A weird amount. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, we can get into that.
I got to bring up a story that a colleague told me the other day about his experience. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, well, but it pushes all that away, saying like I think everyone can agree that violence is not okay. Yeah. But then when the bar moves and aggression is not okay. Right. I think it really puts masculinity in a tough place because, I do believe in gender differences, right? That's a taboo opinion in 2019, but I do believe in biological and physical differences between genders.
What makes us different, obviously, and there's a spectrum of that, and people can find where they want to be on that spectrum.
Right, 100%, right? Yeah. And there's years, decades of genetic differences. Yeah, of course. And body structure differences. Yeah. And I think something that is part of being a man. If you look at our roles, typically we are guards, right? We protect the tribe. Yep. We're hunters, we kill things. Yes. And we're builders. Right. So that's also an aggressive act. It's like, like fuck you tree, I'm building a house out of you. Totally. Right? Yeah. And these types of qualities that a lot of men that I work with and me myself personally get a lot of pleasure out of. Right. Like craftsmanship, right? Like, woodworking. Right. That's an aggressive act. That types of things are becoming less and less normalized because they're like, oh, that's violent. Right.
But it's totally a tangible skill that we all could have and use and thrive from.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And those are the typical masculine skills. Right. Whereas the stereotypical feminine skills are more like, healing, nurturing, social skills, caregiving, which are also valuable. Right. They're just different. Right. And I think we're really increasing the caregiving. I mean, we're both in caregiving professions.
Right.
So we find value.
A lot more men in this profession now than there was. Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
But I don't want to lose the masculine values too.
Exactly.
Right. There's something about because I know you do a lot of outdoor stuff. Right. There's something about being with a group of dudes, backpacking, and just going through shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, like getting like dumped on by snow and like shitting in the woods. Yeah, absolutely. And eating like awful food. Yeah. There's something that bonds men. Absolutely. Whereas most women, not all, but most women I talk to don't understand that. Right. They don't understand why that would be bonding. Right. They're like, why would you suffer?
Right. Why would you suffer to come closer together? I think it's what people don't think about in the sense of like, going through the Marine Corps and type of service. Like those men, women, whoever, like have been through the shit of the shit, and it brings them that much closer together. So I get that in that regard. But I feel like, and I think you can attest to this, that sometimes people think that they don't get it and then they judge it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it makes men feel silent or uncomfortable or being masculine is not okay. So with that being said, I want us to talk about, in our own views or points or people out there, tell us what you think, the modern man is, because I think if we can frame that and define it a little better, it might give people a little bit more insight to like what it feels like to be a dude and go through modern day things. Yeah. So Marc, please, again, I think you're such an expert in this realm. Let's put a framework on what we think the modern man is. I think each of us are going to have a different opinion, but I'd just be curious. So what's your take?
Yeah. So I break it down to kind of 4 pillars. Sure. Which is strength, courage, mastery, and honor. So I'll run through kind of what
fabulous to me. Go on. Yes, please.
So strength boils down to physical strength, literally, right? Like we're talking about primal man.
Totally.
And most men out there, right, there's this desire to be confident in our bodies.
Totally.
Right, to be able to lift heavy shit, to be able to be athletic, right, to be able to move, right, to be able to exert strength on the world. Yeah. Right. I remember when I was younger and I was really overweight. Right. I was more upset that I was weak, not that I was fat.
Got it.
Right. Like I was pissed that I couldn't pick up a log. Right. Right. Or that I couldn't run very far. Right. There's something inherently masculine about just like raw power, strength. Totally. Right. So next one is courage.
Right.
So courage is the ability to move through fear.
Okay.
Right. So feeling fear and then acting anyway. Right. Kind of there's
exposing yourself to that is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. There's a word in Latin called virtus, which translates roughly into gameness. So when they used to fight dogs and they used to fight soldiers and gladiators, and they would look for the gamiest animal or the gamiest guy, and that is the guy who was like ready to fight.
Totally.
Right. Like
the guy's just like perked up, no qualms. Exactly. I'm gonna fuck you up. Like done. Right.
Like no hesitation. Like totally. Put me in, coach. Right. Like that is like that is courage. Right? Yes, that is courage of like willing to take risks, willing to like move forward. And I think when we'll get around to dating and we get around to more emotional risks, like there's emotional risk too. Yeah. Of when we feel afraid to talk to a woman or we feel afraid to talk about our emotions. That's also courage.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Overcoming those barriers, I think, is a very masculine thing.
Totally.
The other thing is mastery. Yeah. Right. So I talked about woodworking before, but there's something that I feel men in general relate to, which is being the best at something. So a lot of women might have the conversation with a man, maybe their husband or their partner or whatever, right? Where the guy just can talk about like, I don't know, painting or like talk about like fixing his motorcycle for like hours, right? Like, like men, we bond around mastery. Right. So like, say you and I are both hikers, we can talk gear for hours. Literally. Right? We talk video games and
strategy. Oh, don't even get me started on video games.
For hours.
Literally.
Like that is something that many women are uncomfortable talking about because it's not that they don't have the same kind of thing. They're more relational. Totally. Right. They're more about like focusing on people, and men focus more on things and on technique.
The tangible, the concrete, right? I mean, like what's in front of them in the moment that they can touch, feel, manipulate. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's aggression, right? Like you're manipulating the environment. So it's this idea of mastery, developing mastery, right? Martial arts or dance or movement, anything, right? Like, but this idea of building mastery, I think, is very masculine. Absolutely. And the last one is honor. Honor is really important. Yeah. So I think therapy, I think our roles are about honor. I think we're in if we're in any category, we're in the honor category. Yeah. Which is the idea of being ethical. Totally. Right. And the idea of being a man of your word, and the idea of being able to back up your claims, the idea of like finishing what you started, like all these kind of tropes are true. I think a lot of men get a lot of meaning and value and purpose of living an honorable life. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Committing themselves to a cause, right? Yeah. Like a soldier, right? Like fighting for something bigger than yourself. Right. Right. Not screwing over the people that matter to you.
I think that's instilled though in our society as well too. I mean, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
No.
At all. I think it's a great thing. It's just how we access that, right? But
and you talk about modern masculinity, it's a changing thing because actually millennial culture as well as iGen culture are moving away from traditional honor values.
Totally.
Right. I agree with that. It's much more about like short-term gains.
Oh, for sure.
It's much more about like social ladder climbing. Right. Like things like the family are dissolving a little bit. Things like, old religious groups. Yeah. Traditions are dissolving, right? That sense of honor, that sense of self-sacrifice is leaving some modern men. Yes. And you can see them, at least the ones I work with, that's the ones you work with, are very lost.
Totally.
Because they're like, I don't have a purpose.
Right.
I don't have something to give myself to,
or if I'm not putting myself to a standard or expectation, it's always that kind of self-judgment, doubt, confusion. Absolutely. Yeah.
100%. Right. And like I work with a lot of substance use. Right. So a lot of these guys are hedonists, right? Which is they're pleasure seeking. Right. Right. So they go for the stuff that feels good immediately. And I'm in recovery, so I was like that, right? And I realized that my life was very empty.
Sure.
Like it felt good.
Right.
But I wasn't living an honorable life. I wasn't living a life of ethics. I wasn't living a life of meaning. I was just getting off.
Yeah, really. Literally. I mean, I know that, I'm not in recovery, but I could also attest to that idea of just like, feeling empty, but then like putting myself out there and needing something. And, and it wasn't like a place of vulnerability. It was like a place of like soul art, breaking scariness. Like, and I now reflect on it now. And it feels a lot more authentic to me just to be more of that vulnerable space rather than like that hedonistic kind of like fix, like I need this right now in that regard.
And I think there's this payoff of like, I think men, probably people in general, but I think we're talking about men for this talk, is like there's this feeling of falsehood. Like we know, right? At some level we know that we're short circuiting or that we're taking a shortcut. Or that we're screwing over somebody else. Yeah. And for me, I literally feel like less of a man, right? Or less of an adult when I do that. I feel like a child. I feel young. I feel
immature. Really absolutely. All that.
Selfish. Right?
All that stuff.
All that stuff. That's what my brain tells me. It tells me like, this is not what a man does.
Right.
right? This is like what a kid does. This is what like an outlaw does. Right?
Yeah. Or somebody who just, maybe doesn't fit in society, in that regard, or just, puts up that mask that they need to be this other person or thing.
Right. It's like I'm betraying the cause.
Totally.
Right? I'm betraying the tribe. I'm betraying like the clan. Right. I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
Right? I really don't like disappointing.
Soul sinking.
Yeah. And over time that can lead to things like depression, anxiety, because we have the sense of self gets like obliterated.
There is it doesn't seem like there is a sense of self at all.
Yeah, because it has a very low price. So if you sell yourself out so many times, you realize that yourself doesn't have much value.
Yeah.
You can sell out for
absolutely.
nothing.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people I see or who you see that, like you ask them, what are they looking forward to? What are they doing? How do they feel? And it's just so like you just see in their face, just it totally just melts, man.
You got nothing.
Literally.
You just hit void.
Literally void. Like checks written void, rip it up. Like it's gone. I feel that. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of men and expressing femininity, because I feel like we're at a place where we've really kind of gotten into the idea of masculine modern man, and I feel like a part of that, from my own perspective, is there's a big piece of modern men and femininity, or vulnerability, we'll say, or what have you. So I would think it'd be cool if you could speak to that in your own kind of space of what femininity looks like in the modern man to you, and I'll chip in where it needs to.
Yeah, totally. So there's a couple of resources that I think are really good. I'll spit out, right? There's three books. So one is called Fire in the Belly.
Sure.
That talks about the later developmental cycle of men.
Sure.
Specifically when it comes to being a husband.
Got it.
And this idea of husbandry.
Okay.
And this idea of being a partner and also caretaking. So husbandry used to be caretaking land.
Right.
Like
the
animal
tangible,
husbandry. Right. So actually creating an environment for which things can grow.
Got it.
Right. And being a husband and being a father are really critical parts of masculinity.
Totally. Absolutely.
Right. And that would be, I think now femininity, right, where it's like caretaking and nurturing. And
right.
But these are really core parts of being a man, right? Being a leader in this way and being able to create a nurturing space for people. I think the way that men and women nurture is different.
Totally.
I think it's totally different.
Right.
I think stereotypically men are going to nurture more around providing structure, providing order, providing rules, right? Providing challenges for a kid, right?
Absolutely.
Like you got these kind of stories of indigenous cultures where there's these coming of age, where it's like the little boys are like left in the woods with like nothing, right? And they have to like fight panthers or whatever like, to survive. But in all these stories, there's actually like a ring of men that the child is unaware of.
Right.
But the men are on the periphery, and they're keeping the kid safe. So in the event of something happening, like there will be a man like right there to save. But the kid doesn't know that.
Right.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Right. It's important that the man is doing it from a place of honor. He's not trying to enable the child, but he is there as a safety net.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whereas typical femininity would be more of like nurturing, holding, loving you unconditionally.
Yeah.
Also important.
Of course.
But men, it's a little more conditional. Men, it's like a little more ordered. And I personally believe that I think the balance of both those energies is critical for upbringing a child.
Absolutely.
And they need it, whether in the nuclear family or by finding mentors or by finding connecting to other adults in the world. Both of those types of nurturing is really critical.
Absolutely. What was the other resource?
Yeah, so there's a couple other ones. The other one is Iron John, which is a great book. It's actually based on a fable.
Nice.
It's based on a Grimm's fairy tale that's about men, which is really uncommon because most are about women, right? Snow White, Cinderella, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood. All those are like stories about women in the world tradition.
Totally.
Iron John is about men, and it's from that same kind of era. And it talks about development from a man from like a little boy, right, to a page, to a squire, to a knight, to a king.
Very cool.
Right, and each of those being a different developmental step.
I love that.
So the king part, actually the highest order from that story, is femininity. Because
I can only imagine that,
Because if you look at the king, right? Like so a knight is like probably where you and me
are. It's a knight, right?
Yeah, you're like, you got the cool armor, you got like a dope ass horse, you got a sword that's like solid gold, you're like riding into battle, cutting down fools.
Totally.
Like, and that is what I think many men that don't understand masculinity, they stop there. They think that's what a man is. Like you want to be the knight, you want to be like fucking shit up all the time.
Right.
But the last part, which is really critical, is the king.
Totally.
And the king gives up all of that. The king gives up the horse.
Totally.
Gives up the armor. Gives up the sword.
Shit.
Gives up everything, and he takes the throne.
Right.
And the king's role is not about fighting anymore.
Right.
The king's role is about nurturing the kingdom. Right. And like making sure that the kingdom can blossom and grow, and that the people are protected, and that there's enough food and there's enough art.
To describe that. It's unbelievable.
Right, and and it's caretaking.
Right.
It's leadership. And it takes a humility to be like, yeah, like I'm not going to be on the front lines. Right. I'm going to help other knights get there. Yeah. Right. I'm going to help other men. I'm going to help other women like find their place and create a society that's worth it. And the last one is from Jungian psychology. It's called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. So this guy breaks down the 4 masculine archetypes from Jungian psychoanalysis. Okay. And again, these things get missed off in kind of the misinterpretation of masculinity, which is lover. Right. Right. And magician. Right? Like we focus too much on warrior king. We're magicians. Right? And magician is this ability to like make shit happen, be charismatic, flip tricks. Right? And then lover. Right? Being able to like be really great to a woman and like be sensitive and like be a poet. And get in touch with those parts of you that are more tender and that are more beautiful and more fragile. Absolutely. Right? These are old archetypes. And I think, you know, the misconceptions about masculinity is that it's like, you know, suck it up, pussy, and just do it, right? It's like we ain't about that. Yeah. It's just like don't have feelings and just fight people. Right. And that's not masculinity. Masculinity is those 4 archetypes. It's a blending of all of them. Yeah, and what shows up first in each situation is all based on the person and the place and the thing. But, you know, I can agree to that wholeheartedly that, you know, to really think about masculinity and those other forms rather than just that single one, I think is huge to bring awareness to that. 100%. You know, because people get stuck, and it's really, really kind of sad to see how our society can force that amongst people. But yeah, it brings up some stuff, because I feel like, I don't know, Mark, what your thought is, but that was how I thought I needed to live as a kid. You know, always be the warrior. You know, never think about that sense of femininity or magicianship or loving, because, you know, I had 2 brothers. I got bullied. Yep. If I didn't show up, got my ass whooped. So, you know, I get that. Speaking of modern men in this day and age, let's talk about dating. Sure. Because, you know, honestly, I feel like for us dudes out there, sometimes it's pretty hard. And if anybody out there, you know, feels that way, again, give us a heart, a thumbs up or something, because shit, it's real. It's real, and there's a lot of pressure in society, I think, for us to show up. So, Mark, let's just talk dating, man. Let's banter right now. Yeah. Like, what you can talk about your own experience, clients' experiences, whatever you think, man, to bring in today would be well worth it. Let's talk about my experience. I mean, that's the most real. Yeah, right? Me too. I'll talk about mine too. This goes my client shit. But no, my experience. So, you know, like I said earlier, I'm recovery. Sure. Right? And when I got sober, I realized I didn't know how to talk to women. Sure. Because my main strategy, which I think is kind of that toxic masculinity, was get as fucked up as possible. Right. Do a bunch of drugs, drink a bunch, go where women were. Right? Yeah, totally. A bar, a party. Sure, join the club. Where the women are. Right. And then hopefully I wake up with somebody. Like that was that was my thought process. Totally. Right? Yeah. And a lot of that unfortunately leads to kind of those Me Too sexual assault scenarios. Right, of course. Where there's no consent because both people are highly intoxicated. Totally. Right? It leads to this kind of like bullheadedness, and it leads to a real unconsciousness around dating. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, many men use that as their strategy. Right? They use that to mate. They use that to find a partner. I mean, it's easy. It's easy, right? It's all chemically induced. All it takes is like money. Like you have to buy enough alcohol and right. Totally, man. I get it. So, you know, like use that strategy, and then, which is great, this Me Too movement is saying like that is not okay. Totally. Which I agree with. Yeah. Like that is not okay. Like fucking people when they're drunk is not okay. No, we're not condoning that, people. Yeah, 100% not okay. Yeah. But then you get these men that actually haven't developed that lover aspect. Right. And now they're lost. Literally. Because they're like, well, that was my strategy. Now they're like the only way I knew how to get laid was either to get really drunk and get the girl really drunk, right? Or, you know, in some worst scenarios, like have sex with my coworkers and my employees. Right. That's like a real thing. That happens like all the time. Every day of the week, it seems like for people. Right. Because it's like these are the women I'm around. Right. I'm in a position safe, of power. It's comfortable. Yeah. Right. I can talk with them. Right. So I think a lot of men, me included, when we get sober, when we can't use that strategy, we run into a lot of insecurity. Totally. Because we never developed that side of ourselves. Right. Right. And especially I think for men that like I was lucky that I came to it early. Sure. But I think some men that are in like their 50s and 40s that are going through this, they might be bosses in their life, right? They might be like, you know, making a lot of money, have a lot of success, right? Like, you know, be really fit. Yeah, but then when they come to women, they just like, yeah, literally. Right? Like, just like, where do I go? Yeah, totally have no idea. Totally. I get that. Like totally back to like teenager regressive mode, like cannot even talk to people.
And you just get so like frozen up that it just doesn't even, like nothing even happens.
Doesn't even happen.
And then they judge themselves probably and get in the self-deprecation mode, and then they just crumble.
They crumble.
Straight up.
And then men being men, we talked about mastery.
Right.
We want to develop technology.
Right.
So we'll do things like we'll play games.
Right.
Right. Like we'll try to control the woman.
Right.
Right. We'll try to like not text her back for 3 days so she doesn't know I'm desperate.
Exactly.
You know, like we'll try to be like, okay, make sure that she's always texting you more than you text her, or make sure that if you spend the night, you don't eat breakfast. Like we have all these stupid fucking rules.
Yeah. It's
about what it is.
Right.
But I think that comes from insecurity. It comes from a feeling of not being in control. Right. Is that we want to develop these games or these systems in order to feel in control, to feel like we have
It's like to materialize that in their own head and justify that that's okay, or which is really difficult, I think, because we should approach, I think, the situation in a sense of more so that mental health, vulnerability, talking about it, destigmatizing it, we'll say, rather than putting ourselves into a box, guys, gals, people, whoever, you know, we're not wanting to get in that space, and it's really hard because, you know, dating is fucking hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of men don't have practice with connection.
Right.
So when they hit real intimacy where they're not in the dominant position,
right,
they get very skittish.
Absolutely.
Right. And they'll often push people away, or they'll ghost, or they'll disappear.
Right.
Because all of a sudden it gets like too real, and it kind of breaks outside of the box.
Right.
Right. Because that's one thing. Men growing up, like we don't have the same kind of intimacy. Like groups of guys are not that same kind of relational intimacy as groups of women are.
Right.
Especially if we're raised in a toxic masculinity model.
Right. Absolutely.
Where we don't talk about our feelings, we don't tell each other that we appreciate each other. We don't tell each other we like each other.
Right. Or love each other.
Yeah. Right. Like we don't even go there.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. Like so we don't really have a lot of practice when it comes to that.
Right.
So when relationships get real, we can sometimes be very skittish just because we feel insecure.
Right.
And because we're ego monsters, we like just make it their problem.
Right. You know? Yeah. Well, we project our own shit onto other people, and I think we've all been in that space. I mean, I've done that, you know, to the point where, you know, you hurt somebody, you're not intentionally trying to, it just kind of comes up, and then you just are like, okay, well, it's water under the bridge. Realistically, it's like deep internally, you know, that hurts myself in that regard, even to hurt somebody else, because it doesn't feel good. But it's hard now, and I think with the way the dating apps are and the way that people are you know, fixated on their technology and phones, it gets even more difficult when there's, you know, lacking. I mean, you can connect with somebody on an app. Don't get me wrong. It's just a lot harder to do, you know, when there's like even that in a code to do it. And I don't know, you know, what you all think out there, but online dating is it's great. It's convenient. It's fun. But it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of awful. I mean, it's a lot of misconnections. There's a lot of false vulnerability.
Totally.
And I think, you know, we were talking before the show, it's like many men are afraid just to approach a woman in the world.
Right.
We don't really know how to do that.
Sure.
Right. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
Right? Because like they're just people.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you
not
know,
on a pedestal, you know.
Not at all. Right. And you were saying, like, you know, how do you do it? You're joking, and I'm like, you just say, hi, my name is Mark. Like, what's up? You know, I mean, like, it's just pretty easy. Right. I mean, one of the biggest, I remember this, you know, when I was going through this dating thing, like, it was a mind-blowing moment when I realized that women are also in the bar to get laid. Right. Totally. I like didn't comprehend that. Like I was like,
that's fair, man. It's fair.
But they don't want to talk to me. Right. Like they just want to talk to the no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Everybody's allowed the same intentions for sure.
Yeah. They're there to talk to people, to maybe see there's a connection, right? Maybe get laid. Yeah. Right. Like they're there to meet people. That's what that environment is for. Yeah. I think there are gender roles where men typically have to be the one that initiates. Fair. Have to lead. Right. So I think right now, even in 2019, I think it's unreasonable for a man to expect to be approached a lot. Sure. Right. I think it's still kind of on us to like break the ice. No doubt. But by and large, the women are actually at least interested. Right. Doesn't mean you get to have sex with them, but it means that they're at least interested in maybe talking to you. Yeah, which is the first step of breaking a barrier down, right? I mean, if you can have nice, deep, comfortable conversation, more likely to, you know, be in a better space. Right. Well, turn to something, right? Yeah, turn to something or do something. I mean, if it's not sexual, it can be a friendship. I don't know. I mean, I think people are open to that. Right. You know, I think that's one thing. The misconception is when going out and trying to get tail at the bar, vice versa, girls, guys, whatever, people, you know, it's just a social space where you can enjoy, have fun, laugh, get to know somebody, and who knows, make friendship. Yeah. You know, that doesn't need to be the end goal.
Yeah, it is a purpose.
It's why they're there.
Right.
That's why we built them. If people didn't want to meet people, they would stay home.
Exactly. Right? Who wants to stay home? Not me.
That's like the thing.
That doesn't make sense.
I think another thing is, I think some of the work that you do with Connected Roots too is that a lot of men are not comfortable with their sexuality.
Right.
So
totally.
a stat that also blew my mind is that women have 2 to 3 times the number of sexual partners than the average man.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's the average woman. So the way the stats work out is the average woman, the distribution is tighter.
Sure.
So like most women have about the same.
Right.
Men, there actually is quite, like the alpha beta male thing is actually real.
Got it.
Like there are some men that have many sexual partners.
Sure.
But most guys either have very few or are kind of in that bottom third.
Yeah,
right. So men, even though we talk a big game, like we're just like on average not getting laid as much.
Sure.
Straight up.
Yeah. No, yeah. Studies show.
Yeah, right? Like we just like literally are not getting laid as much. So a lot of men are not comfortable with their sexuality, even though, like I said, we talk a big game. A lot of dudes will talk a lot of trash, right, and say like nasty shit, but many of them don't have the sexual experience. Right. So when they come into contact with a woman or when they're in a sexual situation, they actually don't know. And because, like I said, we're very egotistical or can be, it can cause insecurity, it can cause pushing away, it can cause blaming, and those are all those toxic patterns. Right. Because we're not told to talk about vulnerability and actually talk to our partner and be like, hey, I'm comfortable with this, I'm not comfortable with that.
Boundaries, this.
I'd like to do this. How do you feel about that? Like we're not educated on how to talk about sex. No. We're just told to just like get in there and do it.
Yeah, well, there's this incredible book, all you guys out there, and again, I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but it's called She Comes First. Check it out.
It's a good book.
Unbelievable book. I read it, my mind was blown, kind of gave me a whole different attitude and experience around what that looks like. And I bring it a lot into the sessions with my clients because so many of them are so confused and uncomfortable and like, what is this? How do I do this? And then it, again, gets into that, like Mark's saying, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then the insecurities and the mask and all that kind of stuff shows up first, which it's really unfortunate, but, people are working on it. So that's why we're here. Right? That's what we're here for. Call us. In that note being said, Mark, how can we find you? How can we reach out to you? For all our Facebook friends out there, this guy knows what he's doing. Mark, give yourself a pitch here right now, dude. Tell us how we get hold of you.
The best place to do is go to marc-azoulay.com. I can post it from my page in the comments if it helps people. And that's kind of the epicenter for everything me. So it's got all my social media stuff. I do my own Facebook Live series on social media, on Facebook.
Yeah, follow him.
Follow me, follow, and subscribe. I got a book list. If you're looking, I have a whole section on masculinity on my book list. So
check it out.
If you're looking at some of the books that I mentioned here, you can get them right there. You can look them on Amazon.
Awesome.
And I have a bunch of blogs and talks about things like this. So yeah, check it out.
Perfect.
That's kind of like the hub.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. Head a Therapist out. Weekend. Peace. Love.
Peace, homies.
Catch you later.
One love. Rah, rah.